Born in Kathmandu, Nepal in 1968, Tsherin Sherpa currently works and lives between Kathmandu and Northern California. His work incorporates elements of Thangka paintings and Buddhist iconography and pop cultural references to comment on the tensions between the sacred and the secular, traditional and contemporary, and settlement and movement. Sherpa's practice stems from his personal experiences with the Himalayan Diaspora, as well as the nomadic history of the Himalayan people. His experimentation with visual language adapt, reimagine, and reappropriate identities, symbols, colors, and gestures to surpass their chronological and cultural constructions. His work is included in private collections around the world, as well as the collections of the Victoria and Albert Museum in London, the Rubin Museum in New York, the Queensland's Art Gallery and Gallery of Modern Art Australia, the Asian Art Museum in San Francisco, the Virginia Museum of Fine Arts, the World Museum in Liverpool, among others. In 2022, the Virginia Museum of Fine Arts presented Sherpa's first museum mid-career retrospective. He also collaborated with fashion label Comme des Garçons the same year and represented Nepal for its inaugural participation at the 2022 Venice Biennale. Last month, he closed a solo exhibition of new work at Almin Resch Gallery in Paris. It's an honor to have such a gifted and esteemed artist among us. Please join me in welcoming Tsherin Sherpa.
Thank you, Jose. Thank you all for coming today, and especially I want to thank Mimi Gardner-Gates, whom I had the opportunity to meet in Nepal, spend some time, and which gave me this opportunity to be here today. And I want to thank the Seattle Art Museum for having me here. And I'm just going to go through some of my works, not necessarily in chronological order, but with a brief history about how I started a career as an artist, how I transitioned from traditional art, which I was studying from my father, and eventually led me to make works that are non-traditional and probably within the contemporary context. So just to give you an example what the traditional work looks like, I was born into an artist family. So my father, who's the second generation artist, happened to be, he was born in Tibet, southern part of Tibet. And then he moved to Nepal sometime around the late 50s, something like that. And at the age of 13, my father thought it was very important for him to pass down this traditional art practice to one of his children. And because I was interested in drawing a lot when I was growing up, I used to copy images from comic books and posters, and was like in the 70s and 80s in Nepal. So that sort of like, he felt that maybe I am someone who he can pass this knowledge down to. And so I was trained in this tradition of Thangka painting, a formal study for about 5 years, and then apprenticeship with my father for another like 10 years almost. I arrived in America in 1998 for the first time in California, in Northern California, and I was employed by a Buddhist center to be their resident Thangka artist. And I was painting traditional Thangkas. I was teaching private classes on Thangka paintings. And So this is an example of one of the works that I created at that time. And living here in the States, in California, gave me the opportunity to have exposure to many different types of art. In Nepal, when I was growing up, because I was growing up in an environment where it was mostly to do with religious art, and I had little access to other forms of art at that time. And also, we didn't have many number of galleries to visit to or museums to visit to. So my knowledge in other forms of art was very limited. And in California, once I arrived here, I had the opportunity to visit different museums, different galleries, meeting artists. That sort of gave me the opportunity to look beyond my own practice, and also gave me the opportunity to explore further. It was around 2003 in the beginning when I was invited by the Asian Art Museum in San Francisco. There used to be a program called Asia Alive program, where a traditional artist is invited, and he or she actually demonstrates this practice in front of live audience. And this month-long residency program gave me the opportunity to be visible in the museum context. And I think somewhere along the line, there was this. I got a call at one point from Jamba Juice, and they wanted to actually work with me to create some marketing posters for their stores. And it was called, I think they had like this new drink which had less calories, and it was called Enlightened Smoothies. and that was my first opportunity actually to do something outside of the traditional art. I never had the courage or thought of doing something beyond the traditional practices. And when I worked with Jamba Juice for several months to create these 3 marketing posters, and that was the time I was creating something for the first time that was beyond traditional works. And so also another factor for me to make this transition occurred because right around that time in 2003-04, I started seeing many Asian artists showing abroad. For the first time, I had the opportunity to travel to visit SF MoMA Museum in San Francisco, and I saw Chinese contemporary arts. And then similarly, sometime around the same time, I had the opportunity to see South Asian contemporary art from, it consisted of artists from Pakistan, India, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, etc. And that sort of inspired me a lot. Some of these exhibits were very, very relatable for me because having grown up in Nepal with a different type of a culture, when I first arrived in America, I couldn't, when I saw Warhol's Campbell soup, I just couldn't relate to it. I didn't understand, because I had limited knowledge of art history also. So at that time, I just couldn't relate to it. But works from these regions that I was familiar with their culture, language, etc., gave me the opportunity to read into these works, and that was much more accessible. And also seeing some of these traditionally trained artists, like for example in China, the Chinese brush painters making contemporary works, South Asian artists who were trained in miniature paintings, etc., were making contemporary works and expressions. And that sort of gave me a little bit of a courage, and also the opportunity to actually explore in my own. So even though I started practicing in my own sometime, it started around 2003, 4, but I was too afraid to share my works with anybody else, showing it to anybody, because or in a public domain, because I felt I always had this confidence that I haven't been to a conventional art school. I don't know if I'm doing it correctly, and being afraid of criticized. So around 2008, finally, after so many years of practice, crash courses on art history, practicing different materials, finally, this was one of the first works that I created. It's titled Modern Prayer Flag. The script in the back, it looks like Sanskrit, Nepali, or Tibetan, but actually it's English. And the idea was, because after working with Jamba Juice, I found out there's a lot of how would I put it, marketing slogans that goes into marketing a product. And that was very interesting for me to learn. And then to create this work, I actually listened to many marketing slogans and sort of compiled them together. So I think it has something like buy one, get one free, food for your busy lifestyle, or etc., etc. And it was kind of interesting also. There's there's one type of advertisement that goes like all you can eat, and then immediately the next advertising slogan is how to lose weight, So I called it prayer flag because I used to live in Oakland, California at that time, and from my studio apartment, from the window you saw giant billboards. And looking back into my childhood, like from my parents' home, when you open the window, you would see a lot of prayer flags. You might be familiar with this traditional Buddhist prayer flag that comes in different colors. So somehow in America, that prayer flag had transformed into billboards. So this was one of the first example of my work. And then in 2008-9, we had this big financial meltdown. And also, there was a lot of conversation about stock market, this, that, everything was very new to me. I was learning simultaneously about these things. And also thinking about my own practices in the past when I was still making traditional art. Uh, Traditional Thangka paintings are actually sort of a tool for meditation practice, and it's used for Buddhist rituals, etc. And when I was still a traditional artist here in America for some time, like for example, when I was demonstrating at the Asian Art Museum of San Francisco for a month, uh, I, like people would approach me as if I am like a Buddhist master, because I'm making these traditional icons. And so that always made me very uneasy, because sometimes there is a lot of projection because of this, preconceived ideas projected onto you. And then I'm too afraid to actually, be myself. So I have to act according to the expectations. So sometimes maybe, even though I drank wine, I didn't drink wine in front of certain people because I felt like, oh, okay, now they're thinking of me as a Buddhist master, so I have to pretend like one. And even when you are making these traditional artworks, technically speaking, or like traditionally speaking, this is supposed to be your meditation practice. But while in Oakland, living in an apartment, making these traditional thangkas for Buddhist practitioners, I was constantly thinking about my rent, and I was constantly thinking about the bills, and constantly thinking like, how am I going to, meet all the expenses like next month? So I wasn't really thinking of the Buddha image as an image of enlightenment, but as a commodity. So, and this work was more of a critique to my own past. And so I titled it Derivative. And then in 2009, I had one of the most amazing opportunity to be at the Vermont Studio Center for 2 months residency. And that sort of gave me the opportunity to interact with many other international artists, writers in one space for 2 months, exchanging ideas, having conversations. And that residency program actually required the artist to complete a small body of work and exhibit it at the end of the residency. And I wanted to create something new at that time. Then I was constantly thinking about my childhood, and because the Vermont, the landscape and everything is also very open, and felt like in the like in the mountains in Nepal. So I went back to my childhood memories when my grandmother, my father's mother, who happened to come from Tibet, and she used to tell me a lot of folk tales and stories of that of the village, where she came from, and she used to talk about spirits. In our Buddhist tradition, we have belief system where we believe there is a spirit of the mountain, spirit of the water, spirit of the valley, etc. And then I wanted to actually use that as my subject matter, and wanted to figure out what the spirit looks like. And also in Nepal, when I was quite young, 7, 8 years old, my grandmother used to take me to a temple, which is a very popular temple in Kathmandu. It's a protector Mahankal's temple, and I sort of that image kept coming to me. So this is the head of the Mahankal or Mahakala, which is like the protector deity. So I borrowed that image to create this spirit character. And for body, I used my own body, a photograph, and then I used a mosaic, photo mosaic program on the computer to. What I did was I actually collected a lot of images of Himalayan people all over the world. I think I Googled something like Himalayan people living around the world or something. And then a lot of images popped up. So I just combined them all together, superimposed that onto my body, and created this piece called Spirit. And the idea was like, I was also imagining like if people from this particular village were traveling, and would the spirits travel with them? Or if they did, how do they readjust themselves or assimilate themselves in this new environment? And it turned out to be pretty much my own story, like having been born in Nepal and then traveling to many different places, finally settling in America, and trying to exist at the same time. So then this, spirit, this subject matter has been something that I have been continuing almost up until now. So there's another example of the work. And I also used to visit the Asian Art Museum a lot at that time. And that gave me the opportunity to see like many different traditional artworks. And for example, I was very, very attracted to the Japanese screens from like 18th, 19th century that was in the collection of the Asian Art Museum. And I wanted to find out how you use gold leaf on your work, you know. So this is, and then this is another like sort of skill sets I would explore and try to incorporate that into my work. And this one is untitled, so this one is, I think, sometime around 2012 or something like that. And this is still the spirit character. This is another one. For this work, I think it was from 2014. I had an exhibition opportunity in Berlin, and I needed to create a large work. So this is probably like I think 12 feet wide. It's a diptych work. While creating this work, I already had I had my studio in our garage, and I would have this radio in the background. I used to listen to a lot of news, talk shows, etc. And then I think I was very regular listener of All Things Considered on NPR. So I titled this work "All Things Considered" because in the news you hear a lot, and normally the news is kind of a little sad and bleak all the time. Right around that time, my younger sister's daughter, niece, was also growing up. She was like 7, 8, 9 years old or something like that. And I was constantly thinking like what kind of a world we are living in and what we are leaving behind for this upcoming generation. And so I sort of did a little bit of a research on like images of children from many different parts of the world. So there are children from Africa, Afghanistan, Tibet, India, Nepal, China, all infused in this work. So while in Vermont, I also had the opportunity. So while creating a body of work, I also explored another practice, which I called fragment series. For this work, I was thinking about my own practice as a Thangka painter in the before, and which required you to actually follow the exact sample that was provided by your teacher. The idea was basically emulating all the lines, strokes, everything exactly like how your teacher teaches you. And also around the same time, each of these like mudras, each of these elements within the Thangka painting has different symbolism. So in order to create this work, what I did was I actually went into the database of many different museums here in the West. And for example, this one, for this particular work, I actually got it from either, I think it was either Virginia Museum of Fine Arts or Boston Museum of Fine Arts. So I took that image of a painting that is from 15th, 16th century, and then I printed it out, and then I would just take portions from that printout and zoom out and paint it pretty large. So all of these are actual individual canvases. So there are 16 canvases on this one, and you get to see the actual size of the canvases, which is almost like 20 by 20 inches. And this was exhibited in Dhaka in Bangladesh in 2014-15, I think. The idea was when I was living here in America, I noticed there are so many people who have come from the same region as me, like for example from Nepal, India, South Asia, and you see all of these individuals who are trying to establish a small family here. Then you see these nuclear families trying to instill a little bit of a culture, language, heritage onto their next generation, their children. And it was so beautiful to see this a small fragment, but at the same time trying to make it preserve it in such a way so that it didn't become complete, but yet it was very meaningful and powerful. So I was probably thinking along the line to create these works. And so the fragments remain fragmented, but at the same time, it also creates something new. So again, in Vermont, this is the third series that I started. It's basically I would take a traditional image and manipulate it to the point where it becomes unrecognizable or abstracted. And I was always fascinated by Zen traditional paintings, the Enzo, the circle, and how can I create something like that with the existing traditional iconography. So I used to play around with these images and then came up with something like this. There are more examples of these works. And these are actually the images of the same protector deity that the Mahankal that we saw earlier. A few more examples. Oh, sorry. And this is another series that I've been continuing up until now. I'm still, these are very recent works. I just showed this in Paris last month. This one too. So, because I was so much influenced by traditional art, I always felt this was more like my vocabulary. So I would take or borrow from traditional paintings some elements of it, and then either mash them together, manipulate them, use them in different ways to recreate something. And in this work, you see lots of hand gestures and feet and ornaments like snakes that are in the traditional painting. And then I titled it Muted Expression. So it's almost like this visual noise when you put all different types of symbolism together. It creates kind of a sound to me in my head. This work was inspired, not inspired, but this was more of a therapeutic practice for me. In 2015, we had a major earthquake in Nepal, and I went back right after the earthquake to be closer to my family, and I had the opportunity to see all of the destruction that the earthquake had created. For example, monuments that I saw growing up were sort of either destructed or damaged or dilapidated, and that was very heart-wrenching to experience. And I was in Nepal for about 3 months at that time, and that was the longest period I had stayed in Nepal after leaving Nepal in 1998. And that gave me an up-close experience to, be with your family and also people. And at that same time, I also got the opportunity to meet many other artists, local artists from Nepal. After seeing the aftermath of the earthquake, I was actually very, very disturbed for some time, and then I wanted to it was more of a therapy for me to create some of these works to, get away from that emotion, I guess. And that actually, right after that earthquake, after being there in Nepal for some time, this was another work I actually created in collaboration with a local artisan who's a repose artist. So during the earthquake, I had a temporary studio in Kathmandu near my parents' house in a place called Bodha. And in the morning, I would hear this metal clanking sound every morning. And I was surprised, because I hadn't been in Nepal for a long time also, and I wanted to find out what's happening. And so I went there and found out that it's a repose artist, and that whole alley was like a repose, like artist area. And I saw this artist, young artist, like I think he was in his 30s back then, and saw his craftsmanship, and it was amazing because I happened to have a traditional background. I could read his work and his skill set, and we became kind of casual friends, and I would go there for tea and then have conversation, lengthy conversation. And he told me the situation, what it was like to live there as a traditional artist now in Nepal. He was telling me many of the works that he was creating, it used to be for religious foundations or institutions or monasteries or like Buddhist practitioners. Eventually, now it was catering more to visiting tourists. And so these religious objects, once that were viewed as a very high art for the ritual purposes, was becoming more and more of a souvenir product. And artists who are like very how do you say, engrossed in their practice are not happy to compromise to a cheaper product. And it's very difficult for some of these artists to make a living in Nepal, because their works would cost a little more expensive than the souvenir works that you see in the tourist markets, but people would not be able to differentiate between what is a master work and what is not. So he told me he had been doing this for almost 20 years, and he was deciding to leave it all behind and was planning to go to Malaysia to be one of the migrant worker to work in factories or construction sites or etc. Because he would get paid a little more than what he would make as an artist over there. And that sort of like really disturbed me to the core, because it takes such a long dedication and time to have that kind of skill. And I didn't know what to do, so I said, like, I'm an artist. I actually make works and exhibit in museums and galleries. And he doesn't know what is museum, what is gallery. He just understands like souvenir shop or religious institutions, you know. So I actually approached him and said, like, listen, why don't we collaborate together? Maybe like, when your work is exhibited in different places, maybe you will get good commissions, and maybe people will start appreciating your work more because of that visibility and everything. And so we collaborated on this piece. It's called Wish Fulfilling Tree. And so I drew all the designs for him, my concept, and then I also so this piece actually is an installation which actually I also collected a lot of like broken objects from different homes and placed it with the sand and broken bricks and stuff. So this exhibition, this work was first exhibited in Hong Kong in a gallery, and then I was invited by Kathmandu Triennale for their first edition. They invited me to participate with this work, which I did. And after that, I was invited in China for Incheon Biennale. And then I was invited to New York to show this at the Rubin Museum in New York. And eventually, the Rubin Museum of Art actually acquired this work for their permanent collection. And in our in mostly in Nepal or even in South Asia, I would say, when an artist exhibits abroad, uh, especially in the West, is highly, highly appreciated by the locals. It's like a validation of some kind for them, and because in the label and also in the database of the museum, I made sure that this artist that I collaborated with is credited. So it says Tsherin Sherpa in collaboration with Rajan Shah. So when this repose artist started showing it to his sponsors, his clients, this, that, and now he's he has so much work that he can't even handle it. And luckily, he didn't leave for Malaysia, and and that actually this result of that collaboration actually gave me another idea. Like, how about there are many other artists, traditional artists, who are working in different with different materials, different practices. Then I went to another lost wax technique bronze artist, which is a very, very old tradition in Nepal, I think. And so we collaborated on this other work, which is this little bronze sculpture. And then eventually with another artist who works with fiberglass, actually, and this one too. So, and eventually that led me to work with rug weavers too. So I found out in the 90s, Nepal's one of the biggest export was carpet made in Nepal. But around the 90s, before the 90s, I think there were many traditional designs that were being woven, and then it was sent abroad. But around the 90s and after that, many of the designs actually started coming in from outside. So modern design carpets, this, that, were being made in Nepal. But because all of the designs came from abroad, the Nepalese weavers became just manual, labor, and there was no, I think there was hardly any local artists who were collaborating in these projects. So when I went back to Nepal in 2018, I felt I started having conversation with this one particular weaving collective and design house, which is like the third generation carpet makers in Nepal. And so we started working with our own contemporary Himalayan design, which we thought we could exhibit them more as art as opposed to just a product that is being exported abroad. So we did a number of carpets, and we also actually wanted to educate the viewers about the history of the carpet. So when I had the opportunity to exhibit at the Venice Biennale in 2022, I actually had, we had sourced one very ancient. I think it was like from the 50s, 1950s loom. That was probably one of the first looms in Nepal being used for carpet weaving, and we took that and then created a carpet, and then we had this history about the carpet industry and weaving techniques and etc. At the Venice Biennale. That was one of my installation at that time. So yeah, and so now like we're going like even working with even more weavers, and I have an exhibition in Hong Kong at the end of the month for Art Basel, and we're only showing like I think 8 or 9 rugs that are woven in Nepal this time. So all of the collaboration, I'm so proud and so humbled to share here that the repose went to a museum in New York, the bronze went to a museum in UK, the fiberglass went to a museum in Virginia, and then eventually a rug went to a museum in Berlin. So this is actually giving a lot of opportunity for these traditional artists to actually be visible, So that has been a really, really, satisfying collaboration for us. And when I went back to Nepal in 2018, actually, my wife and I decided to move back to Nepal after that, all of those experiences of collaborations and everything. I also felt like maybe I can be closer to my father, who's getting older. And then I also had this guilt all the time that my father had expected me to be a traditional artist, and I ended up becoming something else. So what happens if there are people who still wants to learn this tradition? Can we still do something about this to preserve this tradition in its own intact way for those who are interested in learning this? And I found out there are still many people, especially from the rural areas of Nepal, who are interested in learning this practice for their, as a form of their spiritual practice, or even just to be a traditional Thangka painter. And we found a teacher who was teaching in a monastery in Nepal, and we invited him to organize these classes. And for that, we established a small nonprofit organization called Himalayan Art Initiative, where we provide opportunities for these young students to learn traditional Thangka painting. But at the same time, some of them, if they only want to learn the techniques and they want to move on to create something new, we also provide them the opportunity. And another thing, I also found that in Nepal we have a limited number of galleries, and we have 3 art schools in Nepal. Every art school has at least 25 to 30 graduates every year. Then we don't have space for showing these artworks, and especially the young graduates, they don't get the opportunity because their work is not necessarily, commercially successful, because they're just fresh off the college. And so after knowing a large number of artists, and they were expressing these, issues, sharing it with me, and because again, I am an artist who's going back from the States, and they assume I have all the access and I know everything. So there's a lot of expectation, and so later on, we just decided like maybe we'll create a space that can work as a platform and not necessarily thinking about like a commercial gallery, but a space where we provide opportunity for young budding artists. So we just finished creating this gallery last April, and now we have been doing a few number of shows, group shows, solo shows, depending on the artist's capability. And we're always working with the artists who are more in the shadow, who are not visible so much, because there are so many other artists who are like showing in many different venues in Nepal, but we choose to work with the ones who haven't had the opportunity to showcase their work. So, and just some installation shots from some of my exhibits. And this was at the Virginia Museum of Fine Arts 2 years ago. This was recently from Asia Society in Houston. And this was our pavilion at the Venice Biennale in 2022, 2 years ago. So, and this is the loom I was talking about earlier. This is the installation, yeah. And so for Venice, what I wanted to do was I wanted to collaborate with, so this one I collaborated with my assistants as well as some Thangka painters to create this work, and this one with the weavers, and finally this one with the bronze artists. And this is the only 3 works in Venice. Yeah, it was a small venue. Yeah. I think this is the finish of the slides. Thank you. I don't know what the time is like, but I would request if there's any questions. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I'm a big admirer of your work, and now hearing about your collaborations is even more inspiring to me.
Thank you.
I'm curious about when you first started using the dripping paint, because that's not a tradition of Thangka painting, I know.
Yes.
So I wanted to hear about that, and I'm also curious if you've thought about working with masks at all.
Mm-hmm. Masks?
Masks.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, about the drips, I think at that time when I first started the works, some of the, over here as well as some spirit characters have drips on their body. I always had this guilt with me that I'm a traditional Thangka painter, and because it was a religious subject matter, I felt I wanted to do something to talk about current issues, personal, social, political. And also there was not much of a tradition within the Himalayan region, a visual culture to have this secular art form, you know. And and doing that, like when I started making these works, secular works, I would say, then I also had this guilt, like, am I doing it okay? Uh, it's like the deity, the God aspect is slowly wearing out, and the human aspect is revealing. So probably I was thinking along the line when I was doing the drips. Uh, for your second question, you were saying, oh, mask. Yes, I think I keep on bumping into many other traditions now. So definitely this word and so many other things. Yes, thank you.
Hi, thank you so much. I was just wondering how the relationship between your art and your personal spirituality, does one feed the other? Yeah.
Yes. I think in terms of spirituality, I was born into a very, very strict Buddhist family. And I think in hindsight, when I look back, I was always trying to run away from it because I was surrounded by traditional art. My father is a very hardcore practitioner, meditation, and I had to go study like Buddhist script at a nearby monastery every morning, like from 5 until 9 o'clock or something like that. And that sort of like wore me down, and I was trying to run away from it to some extent. But again, like I said, when I was in California, working as a traditional artist, people perceived me to have this like very, meditative. People would ask me, "Wow, is it very meditative when you are making Thangkas?" And it wasn't. And I was just pretending, I think, and I wanted to get away from that and be myself. Now that now I think like I talk about this with my wife also, and she thinks I have become more Buddhist by making these works than before. So I don't know. Yeah, I think you become much more conscious of things around you, how you can what impact your actions will have in the world around you. Not in the sense like doing rituals or meditations or anything, but I have become much more aware for sure. So, yeah, thank you.
I love the piece that you made for the Rubin. And I was curious because I read in the New York Times that the Rubin is closing
Yes.
October 6th, and I wondered, do you know what will happen to your piece?
Yeah. So yes, wow, I'm saying this on the podium. The Rubin Museum is its physical space is closing, but they have not because of any like problems or anything like that, but they are trying to figure out how they can use their collection to like bring awareness even more. So by sharing their collection with different museums, institutions, exhibitions, yes, definitely some of my works will also travel to different museums. Yeah, so that's the plan. Yeah. हजुर.
You touched on it a little bit, and I was wondering if you would. I know it's a role that's been thrust upon you to some extent, but you're sort of the elder statesman of contemporary Nepali art. You're doing some phenomenal work with Thangka Gallery, and I was wondering if you would talk about the space that you've created for Nepali artists,
Yes.
and the opportunities that where you see
Yes.
for Nepali art, largely again because
Thank
of the road you've paved for them, but. What do you see as the future for younger Nepali artists following in your footsteps?
Thank you. Yeah. So, being an artist for a number of years, and also understanding a little bit about the art world, what I found is for artists to flourish in a particular region or whatever, there has to be a good support system locally, globally. In Nepal, what I felt when I first arrived there in 2018 was that that kind of a support system was not there. In the beginning, like for example, even be it from government sector or even from the private sector, there's like a handful of collectors who were supporting these artworks. So what we decided to do when we first started, like even before Thakpa, I started experimented, let's say, another gallery called Windhorse Gallery. And the idea was like, do we actually go to these like a handful of collectors, all of them, or do we create a situation where we actually develop more collector base for these young artists, you know, a new collector base? And we experimented that with the Windhorse Gallery, and I was so overwhelmed with the positive response that the visitors for the first exhibition we had at the Windhorse Gallery, almost 80 to 90% of the visitors had never ever been to any museums or galleries. And the support we got was 70% of the art sales were from the first-time buyers. And so that gave us a lot of encouragement. And I had to almost go to different, let's say, there are many young entrepreneurs now in Nepal who have been educated abroad and who are all going back and reestablishing their business or like starting their business or whatever. And I had to keep telling them like why it is important to support your local artists, you know, why it is, how it can impact, you know, a country as a whole. And some of them were very, very supportive, and so we're growing that slowly, and we have a lot of conversation in the background like about this. We are not going to wait only from the government support. I'm sure government would do that too eventually, but up until now it has been like from the local community. Another thing is like we never had this tradition. Like in the West, I remembered like whenever it's weekend or something, then you see a lot of families coming to visit the museums, galleries, etc. But in Nepal, like many of the children would be taken to, I don't know, and we don't have any parks in Kathmandu, you know, so children's are always like in the malls, like, and yeah, so no place like a gallery, you know, situation. So, and I think it's happening now. In the last like 5 years, I see a growing number of interest in art, and I'm also like communicating constantly with the curators abroad. I always try to lure them to come to Nepal. We host them sometimes and then show them around and generate that interest, you know. And we managed to do that with the Rubin Museum. So for the first time, I think Nepali artists, I think they have chosen about 17 of them to showcase their works at the Rubin Museum in New York. And that is going to be the last exhibition, which opens on the 15th of March. So if you're in New York, please visit. Yeah, yeah.
Thank you so much about Nepal's budding and upcoming artists that you help so much and have them come up. I was just wondering, how do you sort of track them down? Do you have a network with art schools, or you have some sort of social network, or how do you find those good artists that are upcoming in Nepal?
Yes, we have a number of art school networks, artist networks, collectives. So I'm actually in constant conversation and in touch with them. And they're the ones who help me, actually. They bring the artist's work to us, show us, and then we choose, and like, for example, for Thangka Gallery, the gallery we have at the moment in Kathmandu, up until next summer, 2025 summer, we're all booked out, with all the shows of these upcoming artists. So yes, we do have a good network of.
It's not so much a question as thanking you.
Yeah.
As a Nepali, lots of us are here today to see you and to see your art.
Thank you.
We're indeed very, very proud of you. Thank you so much.
Thank
and
you.
When you talked about the earthquake,
Yeah.
it brought back a lot of sadness,
Yes.
but also to see how you've been able to just support the artists and do everything that's being done. Thank you so much. And yes, we're feeling very proud today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, namaste.
Hello,
You're really gifted. I'm really inspired by your self-discovery, in your journey, but also your giving back to the community, right? Like to the next generation of artists in Nepal. But this is more of an observation. But in the beginning, you talked about how you were trying to get away from what you were taught.
Yes.
But what was really interesting was at the end when you talked about your guilt,
Yes.
and how that led you to giving back, right? You
Yes.
actually wanted to create a school for people to keep that art of the traditional Thangka. That was really inspiring, and I think your father played a big role in your life.
Absolutely.
Maybe can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So yes, I keep getting this question. Whenever I get talk, what does your father think about your work now? And yes, it's true. I think because I was living here in the West and I was mostly exhibiting abroad, I never had the opportunity to show my work to my father. And it was only in 2017 when I participated in Kathmandu Triennale, the first edition, that my family could come and see the work and experience the work. And when I sometimes have to, I think it's also how you relay that message. And for someone like my father, who is very strongly influenced by Buddhist ideas, I have to present it in a Buddhist way, So I told him it's all about equanimity. It's all about interconnectedness. It's all about I'm not rejecting the tradition and deconstructing it or anything like that. But it's more about probably having a different approach to regenerate it, So when he understands that, he really appreciates the work. So, yeah, thank you.
So, namaste.
Namaste.
मेरो नाम माया मगराती.
Hazir.
I'm also Nepali,
Hazir.
and I live here and I work here.
Hazir.
First of all, thank you so much for your work and contribution. So my question to you is, some of the work you shared with us today,
Yeah.
especially the one that you label the NPR,
Yeah.
with eyes, one eyes.
Yeah.
I was wondering if some of your work, those ones, have been inspired by maybe Maithili art. I was wondering, are you also collaborating with Maithili artists in Nepal.
Yes.
I would love to hear about that.
Thank you. Yes, I'm definitely sure, like, I must be influenced by so many different traditions because my work is very responsive in the sense, like, I go look at the Asian Art Museum, some Japanese tradition, it comes into my work somehow. And definitely, I'm a big fan of Maithili traditional art. I am also friends with some of the artists who are practicing in that tradition. And I haven't had the opportunity to collaborate yet, but yes, definitely in the future I may, yeah. And I'm a big fan, actually. Thank you.
Time for a few more questions.
All right, hello. I'm a really huge fan of your work as well, and I'm a Sherpa person myself, and I was born here, so I would say I was kind of more disconnected to my culture rather than you, who were like very traditional in Nepal, and your fragments series really spoke to me because of the disconnection I have, and I was wondering, since I know there's a lot of other kids like me who want to get more in touch with their culture, especially their art, if you have any recommendations on how I can learn more about it.
Yeah, actually, I think yes. I also had this experience. Like I noticed that quite a lot, even when I was living in California, when I was creating these works. I think the generation, your generation, was much more receptive as opposed to my own generation, you know, for some reason, I think, and that was a beautiful thing to me because sometimes some of the younger, man or woman would tell me oh, these elements that I see in the fragments, especially because it's zoomed out and it's quite big. Oh, I never knew, like in Thangkas, this thing was there, you know. So, and they go back and then compare it with their traditional Thangkas in their home, and then they finally find out, and then they become much more interested in knowing more. So, I feel very it's amazing. For me to understand that this is happening. But in terms of learning more, yes, I think museum is a really, really good place to educate oneself. I have to tell you this story. When I was trying to, let's say, when I was running away from the tradition and I arrived in San Francisco, and then I thought I should go and visit a museum. I had never gone to a proper art museum before, so it was the Asian Art Museum in San Francisco. I went there to see art, and I remember buying the ticket for $10, going inside, and the first thing I see is a big giant Thangka, you know. So I was like, because for me also, when I was growing up, Thangkas were even either in our shrine room, in our altar, or in souvenir market, nothing in between. And for the first time, I saw this in a different setting, you know, a museum where art is appreciated, this, that. And then I saw all these thick catalogs written by scholars who have spent years researching, writing about this. And that sort of regenerated this whole appreciation for what I was doing, you know, at that time, and your heritage, your thing. And then, so yes, museum visiting museums is definitely one of the, it was a life-changing experience for me. So I'm sure, yeah, visiting exhibitions, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
I think that we are going to finish there, but Tsherin will have a chance to talk to some folks, and maybe folks want to meet him as well. So just want to offer my thanks to Mimi Gardner-Gates, but also Tsherin Sherpa for your amazing presentation today, and thank you so much for joining us, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.